Haile Selassie I, meaning power of the Trinity, was born Tafari Makonnen on July 23, 1892, and served as Emperor of Ethiopia from 1930 to 1974. Before ascending the throne, he acted as regent plenipotentiary under Empress Zewditu from 1916 to 1930. A central figure in Ethiopian history, Selassie holds divine status within Rastafari, an Abrahamic faith that emerged in the 1930s. Prior to his reign, he defeated 𝒄𝙗𝒂𝙗𝒏𝙚 in the Battle of Ankhem. Selassie was a member of the Solomonic dynasty, which claimed descent from Menelik I, son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, though historians view this lineage as a political construct by Emperor 𝒄𝙗𝒂𝙗𝒏𝙚 in 1270 to legitimize his rule. Determined to modernize Ethiopia, Selassie implemented significant reforms, including the 1931 constitution and the abolition of slavery in 1942. During the Second Italo-Ethiopian War, he led Ethiopia's resistance, but was exiled to the United Kingdom after Ethiopia's defeat. From exile, he coordinated resistance efforts and returned following the East African campaign of World War II. He later annexed Eritrea into Ethiopia, dissolving the federation established by the UN in 1950. An advocate for African unity, Selassie played a key role in founding the Organization of African Unity in 1963 and served as its first chairman. He sought to moderate the anti-Western rhetoric of African socialist leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, envisioning a balanced approach to continental politics. Selassie was overthrown during the 1974 Ethiopian coup d'etat by the 𝒃𝒓𝒂𝒏𝒅, a Marxist-Leninist military junta backed by the Soviet Union. In 1994, after the 𝒃𝒂𝒏𝒅's fall, it was revealed that Selassie had been assassinated at the Jubilee Palace on August 27, 1975. His remains were reburied in 2000 at Addis Ababa's Holy Trinity Cathedral. Among Rastafarians, Selassie is venerated as the returned Jesus, though he remained a devout Christian adhering to Ethiopian Orthodox beliefs. His reign faced criticism for suppressing revolts by the aristocracy and for insufficient modernization. Groups like Human Rights Watch labeled his administration autocratic. Selassie's policies also displaced Amhara populations into southern Ethiopia, and his government faced allegations of marginalizing the Oromo language, though no formal laws criminalized linguistic use. In 2020, following the assassination of Ethiopian activist Hachalu Hundessa, protests led to the destruction of Selassie's bust in the UK and the removal of his father's equestrian statue in Harar. Born Liege Tafari Makonnen, his childhood name Liege indicated noble lineage, while Tafari means respected or feared. He became Dejazmach of Garamulata at age 13, a noble title akin to count. In 1916, he was proclaimed Crown Prince and Regent Plenipotentiary and was crowned Leul Ras in 1917, a rank equivalent to Duke. In 1928, Empress Zewditu granted him the title Negus, meaning King. After her death in 1930, Tafari was crowned Emperor, adopting the regnal name Haile Selassie I, meaning power of the Trinity. His official title reflected Ethiopian traditions linking monarchs to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, as described in the 𝒃𝒓𝒂𝒏𝒅. To Ethiopians, Selassie was known by titles like Janhoi, meaning His Majesty, and Talakomeri, meaning Great Leader. The Rastafari movement further honors him with names such as Jah and Jah Rastafari. Haile Selassie I, originally named Tafari Makonnen, descended from the Shewan Amhara Solomonic lineage through his paternal grandmother, tracing back to King Haile Selassie. Born on the 23rd of July, 1892, in Ejesa-Goro, Hararge province, Tafari's mother, Waizero Yeshimebet Ali Abajifa, was of Oromo and Silta heritage, while his father, Ras Makonnen Volde Mikael, had Amhara maternal ancestry, though his paternal lineage is debated. Tafari's paternal grandfather governed Ments and Doba districts in Shewa, while his mother hailed from 𝒂𝒑 in Wollo province. Ras Makonnen, a key general during the First Italo-Ethiopian War, enabled Tafari's ascent to the throne via his grandmother, Waizero Tananyawurk Haile Selassie, an aunt of Emperor Menelik II. Selassie claimed lineage from Queen Makeda, also known as Sheba, and King Solomon. 𝒂𝒏𝒊𝒔 received education in Harar under Abba Samuel Wold-Kahin and Dr. Vitalian, and was appointed 𝒩𝒊𝒔, or Commander of the Gate, at age 13 on the 1st of November, 1905. After his father's death in 1906, he began his political journey. 𝒂𝒏𝒊𝒔's initial governorship of Selalê in 1906 was nominal, allowing him to continue his studies. In 1907, he governed parts of Sidamo province and allegedly fathered a daughter, Princess Romanuak, with 𝒂𝒊𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 Coronation, succeeding the ineffective administration of 𝒩𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒚𝒍. On the 3rd of August 1911, Tafari married Menin Asfaf, niece of 𝒩𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒅, the heir to the Ethiopian throne. Menin, aged 22, had 2 prior marriages, while Tafari, 19, had one. Their union, lasting 50 years, was seen as a political alliance, though family accounts emphasized mutual consent. Tafari played a key role in the movement to depose 𝒩𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒂, designated but uncrowned emperor from 1913 to 1916. Iyasu's controversial behavior, including a perceived shift toward Islam, alienated Ethiopian Orthodox leaders and nobles. On the 27th of September 1916, Iyasu was deposed with support from conservative and progressive factions. Empress Zewditu, Menelik II's daughter, was named ruler, and Tafari was appointed crown prince and regent plenipotentiary, becoming the de facto ruler. Although Iyasu briefly evaded capture and his father Negus Mikal attempted to restore him, the Battle of Segal on the 27th of October 1916 ended those efforts. Tafari's growing influence contrasted with Zewditu's focus on religious duties, allowing him to consolidate power. During his regency, Tafari advanced modernization policies initiated by Menelik II, including Ethiopia's admission to the League of Nations in 1923 by committing to abolish slavery. While prior emperors had proclaimed an end to slavery, the practice persisted into Selassie's reign, with an estimated 2 million slaves in the early 1930s. Tafari survived the 1918 flu pandemic despite being prone to illness. His limited resources initially hindered governance, but his influence expanded as Empress Zewditu's authority waned, paving the way for his future reign. Haile Selassie I's travels abroad. In 1924, Ras Tafari embarked on a tour of Europe and the Middle East, visiting Jerusalem, Alexandria, Paris, Luxembourg, Brussels, Amsterdam, Stockholm, London, Geneva, Gibraltar, and Athens. Accompanying him were prominent Ethiopian figures, including Ras Seyyum Mangasha of Western Tigray, Ras Haile Selassie of Gojam, Ras Mulugeta Yegazu of Ilubabor, Ras Makonnen Endelkacho, and Blatangeta Herui Welde Selassie. The primary objective of the journey was to secure Ethiopia's access to the sea. However, discussions in Paris with the French Foreign Ministry revealed that this ambition would not be realized. Despite this setback, Tafari and his entourage used the opportunity to study European advancements in schools, hospitals, factories, and churches. While adopting many reforms inspired by Europe, Tafari maintained caution to avoid economic imperialism, requiring enterprises to have some degree of local ownership. Reflecting on modernization, he stated, "We need European progress only because we are surrounded by it. That is at once a benefit and a misfortune." Tafari's travels through Europe, the Levant, and Egypt were met with widespread fascination and enthusiasm. His entourage included notable figures like Seyyum Mangasha and Haile Selassie, whose fathers had fought in Ethiopia's victory over Italy at the Battle of 𝒩𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒂, as well as Mulugeta Yegazu, who had personally participated in the battle. The Ethiopians' oriental dignity and elaborate court dress captivated the media. Adding to the spectacle, Tafari brought a pride of lions, which he gifted to leaders such as French President Alexandre Millerand, British Prime Minister Raymond Poincaré, and King George V, as well as to the Paris Zoological Garden. In exchange for 2 lions, the United Kingdom returned the imperial crown of Emperor Tewodros II, taken during the 1868 expedition to Abyssinia, for its delivery to Empress Zewditu. During the trip, 𝒂𝒊𝒔 visited the Armenian monastery in Jerusalem, where he adopted 40 Armenian orphans, survivors of the Armenian genocide. Known as the 𝒂𝒊𝒔𝒂𝒣, 40 children, these orphans received musical training under 𝒂𝒊𝒔's arrangement and later formed Ethiopia's imperial brass band. In 1928, 𝒂𝒊𝒔 Makonnen, later known as Haile Selassie, faced a significant challenge to his authority. 𝒂𝒂𝒒 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒚, governor of Sidamo province, defied 𝒂𝒊𝒔's regulations, withholding revenue and arriving in Addis Ababa with a large armed force. 𝒂𝒊𝒔 strategically neutralized Balcha by having Ras Kassa Haile Selassie buy off his troops and replaced him as governor. This incident bolstered Empress 𝒄𝒐𝒊𝒐𝒏𝒚 political standing, leading her to accuse 𝒂𝒊𝒔 of treason. However, a coup attempt by palace reactionaries in September 1928 ended in failure, with 𝒂𝒊𝒔's forces ultimately prevailing. On October 7, 1928, 𝒄𝒐𝒊𝒐 crowned 𝒂𝒊𝒔 as Negus, or king. Upon 𝒄𝒐𝒊𝒐's death, 𝒂𝒊𝒔 ascended to the throne as Emperor Haile Selassie, proclaimed 𝒂𝒊𝒐𝒧𝒧𝒧𝒧𝒧 or King of Kings of Ethiopia. His coronation on November 2, 1930 at St. George's Cathedral in Addis Ababa was an extravagant event attended by global dignitaries including the Duke of Gloucester, Marshal Louis-François d'Espèrey of France, and representatives from Egypt, Turkey, Sweden, Belgium, Japan, and the United States. American travel lecturer Burton Holmes documented the ceremony on film, and British author Evelyn Waugh provided a detailed report. The coronation incurred significant expenses, with reports suggesting costs exceeding $3 million. Haile Selassie distributed lavish gifts, including a golden-cased Bible sent to an American bishop. On July 16, 1931, Haile Selassie introduced Ethiopia's first written constitution, which created a bicameral legislature and concentrated power in the hands of the nobility. Although it aimed to transition toward democracy, the constitution limited succession to Selassie's descendants, excluding other dynastic princes. In 1932, Ethiopia formally absorbed the Sultanate of Jimma after the death of Sultan Aba Jifar II. During the 1930s, Benito Mussolini's fascist regime sought to avenge Italy's prior defeat in the First Italo-Abyssinian War and unite its colonies in Eritrea and Italian Somaliland by conquering Ethiopia. Following the 1934 𝒂𝒊𝒊 incident, Haile Selassie mobilized Ethiopian forces, but the technologically superior Italian military, equipped with chemical weapons, launched an invasion in October 1935. Despite initial Ethiopian successes during the Christmas offensive, the Italians ultimately defeated the Ethiopian forces, culminating in the Battle of 𝒉𝒐𝒂𝒄 in March 1936. After Ethiopia's northern armies were destroyed and Addis Ababa became indefensible, Haile Selassie decided to leave Ethiopia to present his case to the League of Nations. On May 2, 1936, he departed with his family for French Somaliland. 5 days later, Italian forces entered Addis Ababa and Mussolini declared Ethiopia an Italian province, installing Victor Emmanuel III as emperor. Haile Selassie and his entourage first traveled to Jerusalem, emphasizing their Solomonic dynasty's connection to the House of David. From there, they sailed to Gibraltar and eventually reached Geneva to appeal for international support. However, the League of Nations' collective security measures proved ineffective against Italy's aggression. On May 12, 1936, Haile Selassie addressed the League of Nations to appeal against Italy's invasion. Italy, in protest, withdrew its delegation. Although fluent in French, Selassie delivered his speech in Amharic, accusing Italy of using chemical weapons against military and civilian targets. Earlier that year, Time magazine named Selassie Man of the Year for 1935, and his speech in June 1936 made him a global symbol for anti-fascists. Despite this recognition, he failed to secure the international support he needed. The League imposed only partial sanctions on Italy, and key nations recognized Italy's occupation by 1937, except for 6 countries, including the Soviet Union and the United States. During his exile from 1936 to 1941, Selassie lived in Fairfield House, Bath, England. He spent his days walking with Casa Haile Selassie and studying diplomatic history. It was during this period that he began his 90,000-word autobiography. Before settling in Bath, he briefly stayed in Worthing and Wimbledon. A bust commemorating Selassie's time in Wimbledon became a pilgrimage site for the Rastafari community until it was destroyed in 2020. During his stay in Malvern, his family attended local schools and he visited Holy Trinity Church. A blue plaque was unveiled in Malvern in 2011, with Rastafari representatives participating in the ceremony. Selassie countered Italian propaganda during his exile, condemning the desecration of religious sites and artifacts and speaking out against Italian atrocities. His appeals for international intervention were mostly ignored until Italy joined World War II on the German side in 1940. Support for Ethiopia grew among African American organizations, and Selassie addressed the American public in 1937, despite suffering a fractured knee in an accident. His address emphasized diplomacy and goodwill, linking Christianity with the League of Nations principles. Selassie faced personal tragedies during this time. His two sons-in-law were executed by the Italians, and his daughter, Romanewerk, died in captivity. Another daughter, 𝒂𝒂𝒂, died in childbirth after his return to Ethiopia. Following his restoration, Selassie donated Fairfield House to Bath as a residence for the elderly. During the East African Campaign in 1941, Selassie returned to Ethiopia with the support of British and Ethiopian forces. On May 5, 1941, 5 years after the Italian occupation began, he re-entered Addis Ababa and urged Ethiopians to avoid retaliatory violence. In 1942, Selassie officially abolished slavery, imposing severe penalties for violations. After World War II, Ethiopia joined the United Nations and expanded its territory with the Ogaden region and Eritrea's federation under Ethiopian administration. Despite attempts at modernization, Selassie struggled to implement reforms due to resistance from the nobility and clergy. Efforts to introduce progressive taxes were blocked, and land taxes often burdened peasants. Selassie also worked toward the autocephaly of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, achieving independence from the Coptic Church in 1959. Additionally, he introduced reforms to limit church privileges and taxed church lands. In foreign affairs, Selassie maintained Ethiopia's alignment with collective security. Ethiopian troops participated in the Korean War, and he supported African decolonization. He fostered cordial relations with global leaders, including Queen Elizabeth II, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and Jawaharlal Nehru. Domestically, Selassie faced unrest, including a rebellion in Harar in 1948, which was violently suppressed. Hararis, who had been promised autonomy, protested against Amhara dominance and Selassie's policies. During his Silver Jubilee in 1955, Selassie introduced a revised constitution granting limited political participation while maintaining his authority. Educational reforms and modernization efforts followed, but Ethiopia remained semi-feudal, with peasants bearing heavy burdens. In 1958, a famine in Tigray province killed an estimated 100,000 people before it ended in 1961. The government mobilized relief efforts, and Selassie personally donated grain. However, the crisis highlighted the country's vulnerabilities to natural disasters and epidemics. Selassie maintained international goodwill through gestures such as donating aid to Britain during its 1947 floods, underscoring his commitment to collective security and global cooperation. During the Congo crisis of 1960, Haile Selassie contributed Ethiopian troops to the United Nations peacekeeping force under Security Council Resolution 143. However, while on a state visit to Brazil on December 13, 1960, an imperial guard coup briefly declared his son, 𝒂𝒊𝒂𝒂, as emperor. This attempt, denounced by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and crushed by the army and police, was pivotal as it marked the first time Ethiopians questioned the monarchy's rule without public consent. The aftermath saw increased student advocacy for the peasantry. spurring Selassie to implement reforms, including land grants to political groups and officials. Selassie maintained strong ties with the West and advocated for African decolonization. Eritrea's political future was contentious, with the United Nations eventually federating it with Ethiopia through Resolution 390-V in 1950. Tensions later escalated into the Eritrean War of Independence from 1961 to 1991. In 1963, Selassie oversaw the creation of the Organization of African Unity, becoming its first chairperson and mediating regional disputes. His vision of a United States of Africa influenced future leaders. Domestic challenges included the Bail Revolt in 1963, spurred by tax grievances and external support from Somalia. Ethiopian forces, backed by US and UK allies, quelled the insurgency after 6 years. Selassie's foreign policy was marked by his advocacy for peace, as seen in his 1963 United Nations speech and his opposition to the Vietnam War. He also sought progressive tax reforms in 1966, facing resistance that highlighted growing unrest among landowners and the nobility. As Ethiopia's longest-serving head of state, Selassie retained international prestige but faced mounting domestic issues. Student protests, fueled by exposure to leftist ideologies and resistance from conservative institutions, hindered his land reforms. Ethiopia received significant foreign aid with $140 million allocated to the military and $240 million for economic development. Despite these efforts, civil liberties remained restricted and human rights abuses increased during conflicts with Eritrean separatists. Famine struck Ethiopia, particularly Wollo and Tigray, between 1972 and 1974, leading to tens of thousands of deaths. Reports conflict on whether Selassie fully understood the famine's severity. The crisis, compounded by corrupt officials, rising oil prices and unemployment, eroded public support. Military discontent grew, culminating in the resignation of Prime Minister 𝒂𝐴𝐿𝒂𝐻𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐻𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐻, in 1974, replaced by 𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐻𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐻𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐻. The 𝒃𝒓𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒅, a military committee, capitalized on the unrest to oust Selassie on September 12, 1974. The 82-year-old emperor was placed under house arrest and much of his family was imprisoned. The 𝒃𝒓𝒂𝒏𝒅's consolidation of power led to the execution of 60 former officials, including Selassie's grandson, Rear Admiral Iskinder Desta, in what became known as Black Saturday. The monarchy's legitimacy was formally revoked, ending the Solomonic dynasty. Selassie's final years were marked by imprisonment and political isolation, with the collapse of his regime symbolizing a broader shift in Ethiopian governance. His legacy, while complex, remains a significant chapter in Ethiopia's history. Haile Selassie championed the advancement of Ethiopian art, believing it was crucial to the nation's reconstruction. He encouraged a contemporary approach to traditional art forms, particularly those associated with the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Selassie supported artists like 𝒂𝒂𝒂 Tekle, who gained international recognition and portrayed Ethiopian life through his works. He also funded art programs and provided scholarships, benefiting artists such as 𝒂𝒂𝒂 Selam and 𝒂𝒂𝒂 Ngida. Selassie often visited Bishoftu to appreciate the work of Ethiopian painters, including Lema Guya, whose military-themed art gained his admiration. Guya later joined the Air Force while continuing his artistic pursuits under Selassie's patronage. Selassie also played a pivotal role in the performing arts, establishing Ethiopia's first theatre house in 1935 and inaugurating the National Theatre in Addis Ababa in 1955. His literary contribution includes the autobiography My Life and Ethiopia's Progress, written during and after his exile in the Second Italo-Ethiopian War, though parts of it were likely compiled by officials. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel, Africarized, to help us reach more people and create more great content about Africa. Under Selassie's reign, Ethiopia saw a rise in international sports participation. He fostered the growth of national organizations like the Ethiopian Football Federation and the basketball team. Ethiopia's victory in its first African Cup of Nations was celebrated with Selassie presenting the AFCON trophy. Selassie personally honored Olympians like Abebe Bikila, awarding him the Star of Ethiopia and the Order of Menelik II. Other athletes, such as Mamo Wolde, also received Selassie's direct encouragement and support. Raised in Ethiopia's traditional Christian heritage, Selassie was a devout follower of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. His reign saw efforts to unify Oriental Orthodox communities, including those in Egypt, Armenia, and Syria. Despite these efforts, Selassie supported the Ethiopian Church's autonomy when it was granted its patriarch. His diplomatic relations with other religious leaders, such as Pope Cyril VI of Alexandria, strengthened inter-Orthodox ties. Under his rule, Ethiopia's legal system became more inclusive, granting Islamic courts jurisdiction over Muslim-related matters. Selassie also engaged directly with Ethiopia's Muslim community, demonstrating respect for its leaders' concerns. As the head of the royal family, Selassie upheld his authority over household matters. Unlike earlier Ethiopian monarchs, he extended political roles to his immediate family. His grandson, Rear Admiral Iskender Desta, served in the Ethiopian Navy. However, there were claims, unverified, that Desta pressured Selassie to alter the line of succession. In education, Selassie ensured his grandchildren attended elite institutions globally, including Gordonstown School in the United Kingdom and Columbia University in the United States. During the 1930s and 40s, Selassie was celebrated globally, especially during Italy's invasion of Ethiopia. Western media, including Time magazine, which named him Man of the Year in 1935, depicted him as a symbol of resistance against fascism and a beacon of African unity. His post-World War II initiatives, like establishing Addis Ababa University and the Organization of African Unity, further cemented his legacy as a modernizer and anti-colonial leader. However, by the 1970s, economic hardship and famine tarnished his image. Public dissatisfaction with his governance led to mass protests and eventually his removal from power. Selassie's contributions to education, Pan-Africanism and global diplomacy remain significant, earning him recognition as one of history's key political figures. Time ranked him among the top 25 political icons of all time. Numerous tributes to Selassie exist, particularly in Ethiopia, where a 2019 memorial was unveiled at the African Union headquarters, honoring his efforts in Pan-Africanism. Unity Park in Addis Ababa features a wax statue of him, while schools and roads in countries like Jamaica and Kenya bear his name. However, his legacy remains contentious. In 2020, a bust of Selassie was destroyed by protesters, reacting to the killing of Oromo singer Hachalu Hundessa. Selassie's impact extends into popular culture with his depiction in video games, songs and films. Notable works include Teddy Afro's nationalistic song Haile Selassie and a 2024 biopic where Selassie appears in Rastafarian lore. His image has been immortalized through art and photography, ensuring his place in history as a complex and transformative figure. During the Congo crisis of 1960, Haile Selassie contributed Ethiopian troops to the United Nations peacekeeping force under Security Council Resolution 143. However, while on a state visit to Brazil on December 13, 1960, an imperial guard coup briefly declared his son, 𝒂𝒐𝒴 as emperor. This attempt, denounced by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and crushed by the army and police, was pivotal as it marked the first time Ethiopians questioned the monarchy's rule without public consent. The aftermath saw increased student advocacy for the peasantry, spurring Selassie to implement reforms, including land grants to political groups and officials. Selassie maintained strong ties with the West and advocated for African decolonization. Eritrea's political future was contentious, with the United Nations eventually federating it with Ethiopia through Resolution 390-V in 1950. Tensions later escalated into the Eritrean War of Independence from 1961 to 1991. In 1963, Selassie oversaw the creation of the Organization of African Unity, becoming its first chairperson and mediating regional disputes. His vision of a United States of Africa influenced future leaders. Domestic challenges included the Bail Revolt in 1963, spurred by tax grievances and external support from Somalia. Ethiopian forces, backed by US and UK allies, quelled the insurgency after 6 years. Selassie's foreign policy was marked by his advocacy for peace, as seen in his 1963 United Nations speech and his opposition to the Vietnam War. He also sought progressive tax reforms in 1966, facing resistance that highlighted growing unrest among landowners and the nobility. As Ethiopia's longest-serving head of state, Selassie retained international prestige but faced mounting domestic issues. Student protests, fueled by exposure to leftist ideologies and resistance from conservative institutions, hindered his land reforms. Ethiopia received significant foreign aid with $140 million allocated to the military and $240 million for economic development. Despite these efforts, civil liberties remained restricted, and human rights abuses increased during conflicts with Eritrean separatists. Famine struck Ethiopia, particularly Wollo and Tigray, between 1972 and 1974, leading to tens of thousands of deaths. Reports conflict on whether Selassie fully understood the famine's severity. The crisis, compounded by corrupt officials, rising oil prices and unemployment, eroded public support. Military discontent grew, culminating in the resignation of Prime Minister 𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂𝐿𝒂 The 𝒃𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒅, a military committee, capitalized on the unrest to oust Selassie on September 12, 1974. The 82-year-old emperor was placed under house arrest and much of his family was imprisoned. The 𝒃𝒂💏's consolidation of power led to the execution of 60 former officials, including Selassie's grandson, Rear Admiral Iskinder Desta, in what became known as Black Saturday. The monarchy's legitimacy was formally revoked, ending the Solomonic dynasty. Selassie's final years were marked by imprisonment and political isolation, with the collapse of his regime symbolizing a broader shift in Ethiopian governance. His legacy, while complex, remains a significant chapter in Ethiopia's history. Over his 58 years of leadership from 1916 to 1974, as regent and later emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie received a vast array of honors and decorations from Ethiopia and other nations. His extensive travels and diplomatic engagements made him one of the most decorated individuals in history. The Guinness Book of World Records once recognized him as the most decorated person ever. Titles and styles. 23rd July 1892 to 1st November 1905, 𝒃𝒓𝒂𝒏𝒅, 1st November 1905 to 11th February 1917, 𝒃𝒓𝒂𝒏𝒅, 11th February 1917 to 7th October 1928, Balamulu, Sultan, Enderase Leolras 𝒂𝒂💏, 7th October 1928 to 2nd November 1930, Negus 𝒂𝒂💏, 2nd November 1930 to 12th September 1974, by the conquering Lion of Judah, His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, Elect of God, 134th Christian ruler of Ethiopia. On 21st January 1965, he was venerated as Defender of the Faith by Oriental Orthodox Church patriarchs. National Orders: Chief Commander, Order of the Star of Ethiopia, 1909, Grand Collar, Order of Solomon, 1930, Grand Cordon, Orders of the Seal of Solomon, Queen of Sheba, Holy Trinity, Menelik II, and Fidelity. Foreign Orders. Haile Selassie received numerous foreign honors, including United Kingdom Honorary Knight, Grand Cross of the Orders of St. Michael and St. George, 1917, Royal Victorian Order, 1930, and the Order of the Bath, 1924. Stranger Knight Companion of the Order of the Garter, 1954. Italy. Knight Grand Cross of the Orders of Saints Maurice and Lazarus, 1924, and the Crown of Italy, 1917. France, Grand Cross of the Legion of Honor, 1924. Japan, Collar of the Order of the Chrysanthemum, 1956. United States, Chief Commander of the Legion of Merit, 1945. Portugal, Grand Cross with Collar, Order of the Tower and Sword, 1925. Additional decorations from Belgium, Greece, Germany, Norway, Sweden, and numerous other countries. Foreign decorations and medals. France, Croix de Guerre, 1945, and Military Medal, 1954. United Kingdom, Queen Elizabeth II Coronation Medal, 1953. Iran, medals commemorating the 2500th anniversary of the Persian Empire and the Shah's coronation. Other medals from the United Nations, Yugoslavia, Jamaica, and more. Other distinctions. Haile Selassie was an honorary citizen of various countries, including Yugoslavia and Malawi. He also received titles such as Great Buffalo High Chief in the United States and Great King of Malawi. Military ranks: Field Marshal of the Ethiopian Army, Admiral of the Fleet in the Ethiopian Navy, Marshal of the Ethiopian Air Force, and a foreign rank Honorary Field Marshal in the British Army, 1965. Haile Selassie's legacy as a leader, diplomat, and decorated figure remains unparalleled in modern history.